The first talk in this series is on deployment of technology. We have Vami Koticha and Sameep Padora from sP+a to discuss appropriation of this technology from design to execution. The work by sP+a strikes the perfect balance through sensitive designs, community participation, and deployment of technology. Vami, Aparna, and Sameep are the principal architects of sP+a, a Mumbai-based architecture studio engaged in projects of multiple scales, all framed within a larger interest in history and typological research. So without much ado, over to you, Sameep and Vami.
Hi everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Geeta. I just quickly want to say that in these trying times, even a small kind of event like this, contributing to any kind of relief for the kind of corona epidemic we face now is very commendable. I'm going to quickly begin by talking about a little bit about how we look at technology really in our practice. And I think one thing that is important for us, whether it's a project that is small or large, and whether the program, the project is residential, commercial, institutional, is really to kind of examine the role of technology, not so much high technology. So it's not necessarily about how you can do cutting edge high technology work as much as it is about appropriate technologies. We often use a lot of hello. Yes, hello.
Yes, please continue. We can hear you.
Yeah, okay. So we often use a lot of softwares that that allow us to, in some sense, extend the ability of a project to respond to program, to material, to performance, and it's through technology that we are being able to make that that bridge in some sense from the idea of artifact and performance. And really, I think what we'll try and do today is run through a few projects that talk about how we've used different kinds of techniques and technologies to be able to fulfill certain kinds of needs of a few projects. And these would range from small installations to in art galleries to even community centers in rural India. So what I'm going to do is let Vami begin the presentation and take you through some of these projects. Over to you, Vami.
Thanks, Sameep. Thanks, Sonam and Geeta. And good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's sound and safe and taking lots of care of themselves. Today I've been asked to talk about technology and technology in architecture, and I think the timing of this talk can't get more perfect. It almost seems uncanny. And there is no question that times have changed and are going to change moving forward. The world, I think, is now, I'm going to refer to this as BC and AC, before COVID and after COVID. And while I know we'll kind of take a while to comprehend all of this, our minds are still kind of racing back and forth, longing for some kind of so-called normality, and it's trying to stitch back the past and the future and refusing to accept this rupture and acknowledge it. But all factors of human life are going to change. The fundamentals of modern economy is being questioned. Things like global supply chains are being questioned. It's brought the engines of capitalism to a juddering halt, and building a resilient economy, some say, is the way forward. And similarly, I think resilient architecture seems to be like the need of the hour. When 9/11 happened, it changed the way security happened worldwide. Similarly, COVID is going to change the lifestyle worldwide. We probably need to build a socially just society, a more ecologically sound future. Urban centers are going to redefine de-densification, and new community activism is going to become one of the very important parameters of design moving forward. The very idea of individualism is being questioned because the sooner we realize that all our fates are linked together, the better it is for all of us. The idea of proximity is being challenged every now and then, and hence an idea of even the need of an urban center. And going forward, all these aspects and even things like running a studio is going to change as we move ahead. And this, I found this meme online, and I thought it was very apt and probably very true for a lot of us, that a lot of change and transformation is going to happen because of what we're going through right now. So technology basically plays an important role in all aspects of the life cycle of a project. Over the last few decades, we've seen that technology is an important tool for designing. And I say this not just for using form-finding softwares like SketchUp and Rhino, but even for data analytical softwares like Grasshopper and Ladybug, which give you a well-calibrated output based on the input that you feed them with. We have, in fact, now started using AR and VR to work with experiences and to immerse ourselves in this technology and see the spaces we design even before we get to building it. There has been a huge shift in the presentation and the way we present our projects, whether it's to clients, it's to other stakeholders. At one point, it used to be 2D drawings. Over the last couple of decades, we've seen realistic 3D visuals and renders. And over the last couple of years, we've seen AR and VR being used for all of this. And all the stakeholders have started investing in more time in understanding these new softwares and the new technology and what technology can aid us with. And in fact, I recently read a joke that in times of work from home is now when we truly realize, that which meetings could have just been a phone call and which phone call could have just been an email. And in this changing landscape, I think all of us are going to be forced to adapt new technology. So let me begin with some projects. I've not necessarily categorized them into any particular category because I believe that they kind of work with technology on all fronts. So as Sameep mentioned, when we're working in India, we have a vast breadth of socio-cultural environments, and that require a very different form of engaging with the various context that the country has to offer, the type, the program, the design, the building process, the materiality, everything is subservient to the immediacy of each project and its unique frame of reference. I read this quote actually that made very sense, that a good design is a Renaissance attitude that combines technology, cognitive science, human need, and beauty all coming together to produce something that the world doesn't know that it's missing already. So keeping in mind the studio's approach to look at the context as a repository of latent resources and then connecting it to various processes of networks and appropriating it through techniques that are beyond the traditional use is what we try and work with these pavilions that we started many, many years ago, actually about 8 years ago. This is a simple technique of slicing and notching elements into each other. It's breaking down a three-dimensional surface into something that is buildable and something that is buildable using the local technology that's available over here. So this is one of the cardboard pavilions that we did at an ACE-Tech exhibition. Again, a very temporal space. And in this picture, the red carpet that you see at the bottom is actually what we used the following year. And what we did is we came up with a small module using that same red carpet and worked with these wall-to-wall carpeting guys. And we asked them to come up with this module, and then all these modules stitched together, just pinned at the four edges, form a beautiful catenary arch surface. And what we've done over here is taken that latent resource and pushed it using technology to give us something that would not have been possible without pushing that kind of boundary. What it's also done is it's delayed the waste cycle of this raw material, and those are some images of that carpet pavilion. The next one I want to talk about is this project, and I'll just talk about these specific items or facets of the project that address this technology aspect that we're talking about today and here we're looking at material systems. And what we started doing research was how the mirror work on that fabric, this is actually a very traditional piece of garment from Gujarat, and this mirror work that you see on top of that fabric is what gives it its rigidity, and that kind of, along with the rigidity, it gives it flexibility. So we started working with veneer and canvas and trying to see what we can do with the combination of these two materials, and started using various kind of modules that will add structure to this fabric and body to this fabric. So the tension and the curvature in this is the new hybrid, which was a derivative of the size of the module that was being used. And eventually, we kind of developed 5 different modules that were proliferated all along the surface, depending on the desired result that we wanted and the kind of curvature that we wanted. It's almost like, you know, doing a curvature analysis of a 3D complex surface. These are some of the images of, you know, single pieces of canvas and how we kind of managed to lay and nest that whole thing out. And this is what the end product was. It's like a hybrid, almost like a veneer cloud floating above. You can see the various, the curvature really depends on the size of the module that's being used. The next project is actually a very interesting one, because we were asked to do a master plan for about 100 villas in Hyderabad. And the client was extremely particular about Vastu, and so are his customers. And when we were working on this, I mean, as you all know, and this is probably one of the very common meme that we've all looked at, that Vastu generates sometimes irrational solutions. So the question was, how do we work with a plan typology that every time it kind of reorients in the master plan depending on which side the entry is, or which side the plot is facing, or where the road is, it will rearrange itself to generate a new offshoot, you know. So we came up with this script, and what this does is, just a second. Can you all see that it's moving? Yeah. So what we did is we came up with this script that depending on where the entry is, the program would kind of rearrange themselves, generating a new plan each time. And what that allowed us to do is develop the design as really like these kit of parts that come together, generating various combinations and iterations based on the requirement, based on which side it's facing on the road, or where the entry is from, etc., etc. The next one that I'll talk about is using technology as a tool for structural form finding. So, you know, we no longer get into the project thinking that we're the ultimate authors of the project. I mean, collaborative practice is the way forward. And what happens is, so what you, obviously, wherever you work, you're not the expert of everything that is contextual to that project, right? So the idea is that you work with people or laborers or who know better than you, and then your role is to push their technical extents to their respective skills and their craft, and their role is to just rein in the exuberance of our intent. So in this project, what we've done is actually, you can see those horizontal chajjas out there, or lintels as we call them. They are stone lintels. And what we've done with the brick facade is, though we corbel the brick facade in a way that it becomes the support for these horizontal stone lintels. So yes, it's about the architecture of the corbel bricks, but in a way that it becomes performative in itself. And what was interesting in this project is also not that we developed the form using this technology, but it also allowed us to develop these tools that would allow for the local masons out there to build something as complex as that. So in this case, the technology is helping you to structurally form fine, but at the same time, it resolves something complicated, and it also becomes an aid in the process of building that complicated form. This one is an idea that we've been kind of discussing for the last few years in the studio, and the role of architecture moving forward, and can it be more than a container, and can it come in sync with our thoughts and an extension to our minds. Corbusier once defined a home as a machine for living. And it's time to kind of redefine how our buildings shed their passive exteriors and become the true machines for working that they are always meant to be. It no longer can you ignore the inherent smartness in systems and in objects. There is something called an embedded intelligence, and it's important for us to now address that. Feedback loops are becoming a part of our constant activity that we do on a daily basis in everything. So this was an exhibition actually called The State of Architecture, curated by Rahul Mehrotra and Kevan Mehta at the NGMA in Mumbai. And the exhibition itself was arranged chronologically in an ascending order, starting with the latest work of the last 2 decades at the highest level. And that's what the picture of the highest level looked like. And we were asked to do an installation that would occupy the perimeter of this floor. So that skin would actually encompass the final exhibition that showcases the architecture of the last 2 decades of Indian architects. So we started off working with a lot of responsive mechanisms, and as you can see that as that person comes ahead in front of the sensor, it kind of starts to do something else. So what's happening here is based on the input that you're giving, there is a certain kind of output that is getting generated based from what you've created. And eventually we narrowed it down to the installation was supposed to be an origami paper wall that animated itself when people would try and engage with it. So it's like a transitory skin installation that is dependent on basic electronic technology, but using a very complex idea of paper folding. The folds open and they kind of display the images that are hidden within the folds of the paper. So that was really the concept sketch of the entire project, and it consisted of basically 3 main layers. The back one that you can see is the frame. The mid 2 are the different kind. The most inside one is the mechanism. Then next is the frame, and then these are the layers of paper that go on top of it. The paper basically had like 2 kinds of fold, one where it remained static and one where it would move, and there were different kind of fixing systems for the parts that remained fixed and the parts that had allowed for that kind of movement, and this is how it kind of got fixed on the aluminium frame behind. This was the mechanism that went behind it. So the installation basically worked on a rack and pinion system. It animated the paper. As the motor moved forward, the paper would also unfold because the pinion would move ahead, and the pinion had like almost fork kind of things attached in the front, which would unfold the paper and then move it back and folding it back again. And all of this was done using Arduino coding. And the input into the Arduino goes from a sensor, and the sensor is always triggered whenever somebody would pass by in front of it. That's what some of our elevations kind of look like, where you can see the crisscross framing. You can see the a front fold and a reverse fold. You can see the mechanism boxes that are hidden behind the paper. The yellow part shows the paper that would unfold. These are some kind of fixing mechanisms. This is what the elevation of that entire complex, it's like an unrolled surface showing the fold lines of the paper. These are some work in progress. As you can see, the frame is up and we were starting to install the paper on top of that. We had about 80 students from various colleges who volunteered to work on this installation with us, and this wouldn't have been possible without that. It was a very time-consuming job. And eventually this is what the installation kind of looked like. And I have a short video that will just show people and their kind of interaction with this wall, with this breathing wall. So yeah, that breathing wall really created the backdrop that invoked the transient nature of the architectural codes and the materialities in contemporary India. And it's something that we are constantly talking about, and this was kind of our attempt to work with this kind of responsive architecture at a scale that we thought something that we could handle at this stage. But obviously this is just one of the examples of the unimaginable applications that this technology can actually have, um, and with this, I move to the last project actually, which is the Sharda Library, which I would like to talk about, because this is one of the few English medium schools actually in that area. And when we were talking to Mr. Sameep Padora, who is the trustee who runs this the college out there, and he was telling us that how his daughter was telling him that, dad, that if you want to do something good in this school, you should build a library out here, and that is a special way of contributing to the youth today. And he also mentioned that how some of the students would come back and tell him, that, sir, I love the campus, and, I have this amazing memory of sitting in the campus in this one nook and corner and reading a book. And that made us think that, can architecture actually embed itself in the memory of a child like that? And when we were discussing this in the studio, I realized that as a child, I was extremely intimidated, to go to the library in my school. It had these high ceilings and these tall bookshelves that I could never reach, and so many rules to abide that it always felt more comfortable taking a book from there than just going and sitting under a tree and reading it in the garden, which made us realize that we stumbled upon this after a lot of brainstorming, that a simple hypothesis that children are way more comfortable with landscape. They engage with landscape much sooner than they engage with architecture. And really, then can the library be more than just a building? Can it be more than just four walls and a roof? Can it be something where the architecture becomes a part of the memory that the children associate with themselves as a part of their development? Can it embed itself in the memory, which has a positive outcome? So we started, kind of sketching with these initial ideas of the structure being like an extension to the landscape, and it's something that kids are very, very familiar with. Another thing that we wanted to obviously use was something that was very, very locally available out there and was really good quality bricks. So that really became our element of the structure, and we started working with that. What is the best way to use the brick in the most efficient method? Not just as a building system or a cladding system, but even probably structurally. How do you kind of push the brick to use it with its utmost efficiency? This took us back to 16th century Spain and the Catalan tile vaulting system, which was almost forgotten until Gasparino started doing some beautiful vaults in these thin brick tiles in the early 19th century. He built some subways in New York, among other things. We also looked at engineers from Uruguay called Eladio Diaste in the 1960s, and how he worked with these compression rings, and he used to do these beautiful thin cantilevered bolts with compression ring reinforcements within them. And coincidentally, we also found this software called Rhino Volt, which was developed by the ETH Zurich, the block research group in ETH Zurich. And it was a fascinating treasure hunt, you know. It was like we were just following clues after clues, like the 16th century to the 1960s to the current work being done at the ETH, and it was all about like joining these dots together to come to this point. So here what you see is a force diagram that is generated using Rhino Volt. And so this is what eventually our renders kind of look like initially. And we thought we were done with the difficult part of the project, but of course we weren't. And then came the challenge of actually building something like this and doing a lot of mock-ups. So here what you can see is small scale mock-ups that we did for another Rhino Volt shell that we generated using the software. And you can see we are trying different kind of formwork methods and different kind of bricks and different brick laying patterns. And of course, we failed a lot, but that's where our learning was. And eventually, we did succeed, and we did manage to do these thin bolts, which were perfectly stable. As you can see, all of us are kind of standing on it, and it was perfectly fine. We developed a few details with our contractors on how will we work with the load transfer, what will happen with the brick bolt meets the footing, and how will the load transfer happen. And then the next challenge was actually practically building it on site, you know, at that scale. It was easy to do that little 8 feet by 8 feet mock-up, but then when we had to work with a 1:1 scale, 5,000 square feet. So first is the challenge of plotting the shell structure, and it was necessary that it had to be extremely accurate. So we started working with plotting a 3D grid, a grid in X, Y, and Z axis. So every single point was plotted on all the 3 axes by our contractors. As you can see over there, each bamboo shoot. This generated the entire shell. Next question was about the formwork and what do we use as the formwork. We definitely didn't want to use something like ply, which would eventually generate a lot of wastage. I mean, because that ply cannot be reused once it's used over here, then that's something that we definitely didn't want to do. So we came up with this idea of using rebars and laying the entire mesh, rebar mesh on top of those bamboos which were constructed. And those really become our formwork. And as you can see, they start laying the brick tiles over that rebar. You can see the first direction being laid here. This is what some more pictures look like. And eventually, just like that, we finished all the 3 layers. This you can see is an image of the bolt with all the 3 layers completed, but it is not de-shuttered yet. The bamboo and the rebar at the bottom is still exists and it's still there under the shell. And then slowly we start de-shuttering the whole thing. Of course, in parts, keeping the critical points intact first. And you can see that the rebar out there is being pulled out, and that's it. The brick tile bolt stayed as is, and this rebar was then taken and used on another side. And this is what the eventual bolt looked like after it was completely de-shuttered. So this way we didn't waste a lot of material in the formwork, and the rebars were taken to another site and used somewhere else. The next challenge was about furniture and windows. Now we had to obviously enclose this space. It was not a pavilion. It had to be inhabited by kids and teachers and for lectures and for seminars. And but the thing is, we can't pin anything to the bolt. The bolt is in stable state, and when it's in complete compression, the minute we add pins to the bolt, it will generate tensile forces. So what we started working with the idea is everything, all your kind of wiring and everything, all your furniture, all your support systems for the windows, everything will happen from the floor. So as you can see in the plan over here, what we've generated is a furniture system that sits without touching any of these side walls or the bolt at any point. And also what we generated using the furniture was, instead of keeping it as one long linear space, we started breaking the space into these smaller spaces, something that the kids would be more comfortable in, the scale that something that they would be more, that they would associate more with. So that's what our windows also look like. I mean, the reason why they were corrugated is a simple example. You take a sheet of paper and you try and make it stand, it won't stand. But the minute you fold it and then you make it stand, it'll get its structural stability. And that is what structural form finding is all about, you know. So that's how our windows kind of came along the curve over there in a corrugated form. And this is what eventually the final images kind of look like. We had people walking up and down the roof, through the structure, over the structure. That's what the corrugated windows look like. You can see there's mesh above 7 feet, and there is open pivotable glass doors at the bottom. The mesh is for constant ventilation, because obviously there's no air conditioning in this library, so this allows for ventilation throughout the year and at all times of day. That's what the interiors look like. These are the racks and all the fans and light rods and everything that came from the flooring. And they really become so the wiring and everything is carried through these infrastructure racks that also hold the books and all the supports for lights and fans. So the places where the volt would go and touch the ground, obviously the heights were very little and probably not comfortable for older kids. So what we did is we generated these smaller stools, like stone pota stools, and these kind of benches for the smaller kids to sit there in a little nook and read. That's what the windows look like, the corrugated windows. They are pinned only at the floor. They're not pinned at the top of the vault. And these below 7 feet, these doors are openable that allow for people to move in and out of the structure. This is one of the videos that actually somebody shared with us recently, and you can see it was lunch break and kids are having a beautiful time around the structure, moving in and out of it, playing on it. And I guess this is what we probably had in mind when we started working on this project. But basically, what I'm trying to say here is what is symbolic of this project is we are not only now looking at technology, we are not only looking at history as the origins of a technology, and just as a mere inspiration which we are trying to replicate in today's day and age. No, we are trying to take that skill set, take that technology, and push it further using whatever is available today, using whatever software is available today, leveraging it for the access to the knowledge networks that we sit in today. So the outcome is really about a lesson that we learn not just from various geographies, but also various time periods, various histories. And yeah, with that, I actually kind of end my presentation. And one thing that we believe in the studio is that we're never really designing buildings, we're designing ecosystems around the building, really. And architecture, if I may say, is extremely romantic because it's not just about the visual, it's also about the emotion that it evokes within you. And that's why I would like to end with this quote by Louis Kahn, where he says that a great building must begin with the unmeasurable, must go through the measurable in the process of design, but must again in the end be unmeasurable. The design, the making of things is a measurable act. What is unmeasurable is the psychic spirit behind it. The psyche is expressed by feeling and also by thought, and I believe it will always remain unmeasurable. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Sona.
Wonderful, Vami. That was such a breathtaking presentation. Thanks a lot, Vami and Sameep. Thank you for sharing your ideas and processes with us. What we really loved about your design philosophy was the effort of delaying waste cycle of materials that you chose and the contextuality to things. You showed a variety of projects, all of which beautifully amalgamated the community, aesthetics, ecology, technology, and brought all of it together. It was nice that you began by addressing the changing landscapes of these times where lockdown has made us go digital. COVID has actually changed the way in which we look at technology and its deployment. Hence, this being the first lecture was just perfect. So I think my first question to you would be, how are you in this lockdown? How is the office? How is sP+a working during this lockdown? Are you using technologies to communicate, or are you just taking it low?
No, we are definitely working from home. We are working on all projects that are currently in the design stage and documentation stage, and we're waiting for the lockdown to open up. We've already started, using technology to communicate with our contractors for sites that we can't visit anymore. And it's surprising how everybody is so easily adapting to this changing landscape. I mean, it's good to see that it has its reach to everyone. Everybody's at par at this point.
True. Are you able to connect with the contractors and laborers and everyone at your site as well?
Yes. So it is a little bit of challenge for them, but as I said, they are more than willing to and eager to adapt to all these new technologies. They are now installing Zoom and all sorts of softwares to stay in touch with us. We're using drones over there to kind of see what's happening on site. We probably sketch on it and send it back of things that are going wrong. So it's of course, like any other change, there are initial teething problems, but I guess this is the way forward, and the sooner we accept it, the better it is.
Wonderful. We have a question from Jayant Pereira from Sri Lanka, where he says that since we are facing a lockdown and there's no work at the moment, how can the architectural profession help resurrect the construction industry, which may go into a slump or a low, if not now, but sooner? So, Sameep, would you like to respond to it?
Well, I really don't know. Actually, it's something that we've been thinking about as well, and really to kind of think about how, if at all, or to what extent architecture actually has an answer to this. Of course, there are there are consequences from this epidemic that directly, in some sense, would influence architectural typologies going forward. But I think at that scale, really, it's too little, and I feel that maybe what would be best, where our fraternity would be best kind of exercised, or the skills that would be exercised, is to look at just the immediate and to see how, if there are ways that we can develop, let's say, spaces that would enable healthcare workers to still interface with patients without physical contact. Maybe that could be one problem. So, of course, there is a kind of projective aspect to this, to see what happens to the world after this kind of lockdown ends, and what is the world that we inherit, what is the world that we build as we go forward. But those are questions that I think will need answering over a period of time. But I think the larger or the more imperative question to actually look at, really, in some sense, to also to kind of to maybe validate the fact that the architectural community has a role to play, is to see what we can do in this crisis as it's developing right away. Yeah, I think that's probably what I would say. But of course, typological rethink is something that we all have to think about and deal with.
Consider, maybe even rethink the way in which we understand public buildings, public institutions.
Absolutely.
So from your presentation and as well as from your work, we've understood that seamless communication between the ideator and the executor ensures a good final product. So how do you communicate your design to the doers? Do you have a set of skilled and unskilled workers on your site? How do you manage them? What is your methodology? Do you share models with them? Do they read drawings? Do they read do they understand? Because Vami just said that they've started using technology better. They come on Zoom, they share drones with you. So do they actually know Rhino and and use Rhino balls to construct? So what is the bag? How do you train them?
So actually, here's the thing. The idea is not so much the fact that as ideators, we are a kind of group of people, and the executors are another group of people. it's really, I think one difference in the way that we actually kind of imagine the project is the fact that we are constantly going back and forth. I mean, if we have an idea, it probably leads to questions, and to solve those questions, then the people who are actually building the project have other ideas. So then they become ideators and we become implementers in some sense to figure how to document that idea. So it's once you start kind of blurring these distinctions about who's ideating and who's actually building, and allow a kind of back and forth between that process where ideas are not only originating with you, you find that the project itself appears to become richer from not just the perspective of what you're trying to do with the project, but also the kind of knowledge that is brought in either by you or by the people who are actually building the project. In any case, architecture, while we talk about architects as authors, that's really in some sense reductive, because architects architecture can't be, I mean, architects don't build architecture, right? We are just the ones who actually draw it in some sense. So I think if we look at the process as being catalytic, where various actors can engage in the process and hence ideate a better project, I think you get a much more interesting and engaging output from that, rather than thinking about you as the author and then someone else as the kind of builder.
Nice, wonderful. So can you give us a small peek into your routine in, of, how much of time do you, like, I can imagine your offices all being empty because all of you are on site working with the team with your laptop. So can you give us a routine of how, how this process actually works at your, how do you practice this?
No, so well, I think in some sense what happens is when we go into a project, what we try and do is not go into the project saying that, yeah, this is the way everything has to happen. This is the way that it's got to be built. This is the way that you have to, that this is our final vision of the project, and it has to be built exactly like this. So what happens is that we go into a project when we are talking to contractors as well with questions rather than with answers. So what happens is we are also altering our end of the project many a time. So what typically happens is there are mock-ups being done, like you saw from Vami's presentation, that allows to investigate certain aspects. So there's a lot of back and forth, but it's not like we're not also a practice that is completely based on site and sitting there working all the time. We go back and forth between drawing, site, and so on and so forth. So unlike, let's say, somebody like Vinu, who's actually Vinu Daniel, who's actually on site all the time working from site, we are not kind of prescribing to that kind of project model, because also there are the ambition that we have in terms of the kinds of projects we want to do. There are obviously certain aspects of process that need to allow for scale to happen, for instance, or for institutional projects to happen. I mean, I really like, in some sense, we're also taking best practices from I mean, I like some ideas of how to practice from Hunarshalla. I love the way that Ravi Sarangan from Edifice, he's one of the speakers later, structures the kind of professionalism of the practice, the way that they keep hours and so on and so forth. So, so the thing is, or we don't necessarily prescribe to the idea of the architect as an artist, not just as an artist, but really as someone who's also performing a certain function that has validity within the kind of social and the social cultural world, but also within the kind of financial world that we actually operate in. So I think to kind of put that into perspective, it's very important to also talk about how as a profession we are not as relevant as we used to be. That's also primarily because we no longer are building, let's say, the nation as it was during the independence, right? I mean, we are now at a point where the validity of the architectural practice in some sense needs to be re-engaged with, and to do that, we will have to see how we can create greater value for society at large. And the means to do that, I don't think are only as being seen, only to see how you actually can create better aesthetic environments, but also to see how you can actually create real value, perceptible value through experience of these projects.
Nice. Thanks a lot. So now we can open up the session for one-on-one interaction. The process that we'll follow is you'll type in your question in the chat box and we'll take it up chronologically. If one of your questions have already been answered earlier, then we will skip the question and move to the next one. So can I request Shaina Sagar from United Kingdoms to ask her question?
Hi. Hi, Vami. How are you doing? Yeah. So it was a nice presentation, though. So I have a question. Like obviously, it takes a lot of convincing part for the client to, how do you invest that? Like, how do you convince the client to build such a great project? And then, yeah, and this is my question basically. So,
Sameep, would you like to take that?
Well, I think the idea is really to talk about what is the value that the project brings to the client's idea of the program of the project. Of course, the program is paramount, but what more does the project do? So for in this case with the Sharda library, it was really about how we could create this landscape that kids would engage with more and hence maybe be more attracted at least to the physical presence of the library. So that's really how we positioned it. But also I think to a certain extent, I mean, it's a little bit tongue in cheek, but you know, you kind of also tell the client just enough and don't kind of reveal too much and let kind of project evolve as you kind of move forward.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from Saman S. Saman, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, so hi, it was a beautiful presentation. I really loved it. And my question is like, we are actually facing great environmental crisis now, like never before. So how as an architectural community, we are going to fight against the crisis that we are facing now? How can we come up with solutions for the present environmental problems?
Okay. So one, I mean, I think to a certain extent, I've already kind of talked about this in the a little bit earlier. But just to give you a small example, you know, how do you create, let's say, a facility where people are being quarantined, with a large number of people are being quarantined, and and minimize the interaction between them. What would be the form of the space? What would be the minimum amount of resources that you would use, and how quickly can you action that? So every problem that in some sense, or every challenge that is related to the current condition that we are facing can be spatialized, and that spatial, let's say, fabric needs to be articulated. And so maybe it's just even these little questions of answering that, besides the fact, of course, you know, you could physically kind of just get down to the task of making masks, which one of our trainees is doing now. So I'm just kind of talking about how to look at maybe the spatial challenges that this virus is actually setting up, and what would the answers to these spatial challenges be, either through let's say a kind of a small a kiosk, or where a person might stand, where a health worker might stand and examine somebody, or through a partition system that where various quarantine workers are actually, where quarantine patients are actually being set up within a space. Yeah, so that's basically.
Yes, and also to continue or reiterate what Vami said in the very beginning, she said that it is also our responsibility to delay the waste cycle. So that is also one way of
very true.
Environmental sanity for all of us as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think someone has a lot is being already said. I'm sure everybody's reading about it, about what is the way forward, not just with this epidemic, but also before this, about sustainability, about ecological balance, all of that. And I think it's time that we don't look at it as an additional layer on a project where it's very, it's embedded within your design process. It cannot be separated, and only then it's a way forward. The minute we start looking at, this is my building and let me add a layer of ecological sustainability on it, it doesn't work like that. It has to be pretty embedded in your entire process of design, materiality, execution, everything.
Yeah, thank you for that,
Thank you, Saman. Thank you, Vami. The next question is by Suhani Lal Sangra. Now here she, I think, is poking you to share your secret recipe. She's basically asking you, how do you convince a client about the budget if it becomes unidentified in the beginning?
It's actually similar to what Sameep said, right? Like where, again, even with clients, we don't look at them as this separate body or a separate stakeholder. I think we're as invested in the project as the clients are, and they are with us through this entire process of design and execution. So whatever we do is not out of a whims and fancy that one day suddenly in the morning Sameep will wake up with a dream, okay, let me do it this way, you know. It is a process, and they are in that process with us through this entire journey. So if there is a change from the original path that was decided, they are with us in that decision making process of that change. So then there is no question of convincing anybody, because we are all pretty much on the same side of the table.
Right.
Nice. The next question is by Mr. Rakesh KR. Can you unmute yourself and ask it?
Yeah, my question is, can these kind of structures can be made with RCC finish, the concrete finish, the Sharda library?
Yes, definitely. I mean, concrete shell structures is already being done since many, many years. We have seen it at multiple places. In this case, however, brick tile was a locally available material, and we were trying to see how we can push the boundaries of a material like that and use it structurally.
Nice. The next question we have is by BL Architect. I've not logged in with your name, so I wouldn't know. So BL Architect, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hi. The question was that in doing your structural analysis, did you take any data at the computational level, or was the data generated only after the prototyping was done?
So once we have the shell structure from the software, from the Rhino World software, that is of course input in our softwares, or I mean structural stability software like STAT and stuff like that by our structural engineers, and they verified it for the thickness, for the shape, the form, the load calculations required for the footings, the 5 points, you know, where the bolt really meets the ground, and then that was kind of taken ahead.
And also, I think what was critical for us was that when we started the mock-ups, to actually look at how this material performed when the mock-up was done. So to structurally analyze the mock-up, also to analyze various samples that we had done of the sandwich, the brick tile sandwich. So we did like we got brick tiles from various parts, various suppliers, various kilns, and then kind of sandwiched them together with cement, and then tested those out at the IIT to figure out which sample performed the best. So there was sort of a back and forth of conceptual the ideal compression diagram for the project, but after the material kind of strength was kind of explored through this the mock-up and then the kind of testing in the IIT labs.
I think the next question is by Nikita Verma from Ethos. Nikita?
Yeah, just 1 second. So I wanted to ask if your practice always followed technology and softwares. Like, was there a point in time when you made this transition, or was it always a part of your practice? And if there was a transition, then what prompted it?
Okay. So, Nikita, the entire thing really about technology, and really it's you know, though Geeta asked me to kind of do this on technology, but really technology is not how we begin or imagine a project. It's really just a means to arrive at a certain let's say programmatic idea. So if we wanted to build an architectural landscape, we went back to see how vaults were done. We went to 16th century Spain, like Vami already explained, to then see how we could build that in today's time on a form that doesn't necessarily is not necessarily symmetrical. What are the possibilities available to us? So Gustavino's words came about, Philippe's research at DETH came about. So it's really, in some sense, tapping into tools that that we need to realize an idea. It need not be, like I said in the beginning of my introduction, it need not be high-tech. It could be very low-tech as well. For instance, the J1 project, I know Ami has not shown that today, but the J1 project also works with technology, but low technology, and it's actually as effective as using the softwares that we actually use. So, so yeah, I don't think. I mean, technology really is just one small kind of part of what we use to actually bring a project to fruition. It's not the center of the practicing by any means.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sameep. The next question is by a fan. He's seen many of your presentations in the past. Anand Meherwade, can you ask your questions, please?
Anand is not a fan. He's actually, Anand has worked with me a
Oh,
very
wow.
long time ago. So he's.
Oh, wonderful. Because that is what he says. He says that I've seen a few presentations by sP+a.
Well, yeah, I'm sure he has. But Anand actually was working when I just maybe come back from the US. This is 2007, 2008. I don't know if if I remember correctly, but I don't know. Maybe it's actually Anand might have some interesting insights to what he worked on and what has transpired since then and what he sees the practice doing.
I really see a lot of transitional shift from the time that I was working with you, Sameep, and it's quite an interesting progression from there. I would really like to know, when I was working with you, it used to be more of a form-based development. Of course, design was the intent, but then the materials and the other things were different. And nowadays, I see you working more with the local material, with a lot of research into how you are managing between the material and your design intent, which has always been great. So I'd really like to know.
Vami, why don't you answer this here?
Sameep, it's about the time when he was working with you.
No, I mean, yeah, I think it's also about you know, kind of just what you kind of consider as a value system. So, for instance, if I was to kind of go back, you know, when I just started, or when I was just graduated out of college, one was you know, occupied by and this is kind of obviously in retrospect, so it's hindsight is 2020. That I was, I think, a little bit more interested in form, in composition and form, and slowly what I think changed personally for me was to also see the futility of using form for the sake of form, software for the sake of software, parametric softwares, for instance. I mean, I are great. I'm very interested in them. But only for the value that they create, not for form making per se. Though, I mean, it's not a bad thing if you do that as well. But really, that was something that I lost interest in very quickly, because I was no longer interested in form for the sake of form anymore. I was really interested in the value that you can create, and how value is not to be only perceived through the lens of the architect, but really as through the people who actually use the space, and in the way that they and the way that you actually build. So for me, I think that shift was very important. The idea of how do you build in a context like ours, and how do you use a space in a context like ours. So I think that was the major change.
I can happily more relate to the project that you are working right now. It really feels.
I think when you were there, Anand, you held me back, huh?
I would really not know, but what are the odds that I can always join you back?
Such a nice reunion.
Thank you so much.
The next question is by Sri Kumar Kurup. He asks about how do you deploy BIM in your work systems from your projects? How do you handle the consultants, the contractors, the quantity surveyors, the spec writer in this entire platform? I think at the very beginning, Vami mentioned that it is not BIM as we know it BIM, but how they have appropriated it in their process. Vami, could you reiterate it just for a moment so that we could move to the next question?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it, Sonam, that we not just as a, basically the use of technology to aid us to do anything, whether it's design, whether it's presentation, whether it's execution, whether it's managing the studio using software like Toggle to keep a check on man hours. It's everything. I mean, I think we use it through our entire spectrum of practice. Yeah, and I think I mentioned that in the presentation as well. It's not just about the softwares, but you know, using AR, VR, immersive technology, 3D model making, everything.
Also, just to add to that a little bit, while we are actually investigating, of course, BIM platforms like Revit and ArchiCAD, what we've also been doing fairly well successfully in some senses, use Rhino Grasshopper, the Rhino Grasshopper interface to actually do a lot of the stuff that was mentioned about generate drawings that are easy, for instance, for contractors to build with, and in fact, not drawings that would be simple cut sections like Revit allows, or cut plans like Revit allows you to do, but really drawings that can actually be used to build almost directly from. Whether it's unrolling surfaces that might need to be built in a particular way, and so on and so forth. And also quantification becomes a lot, I mean, for us has become a lot easier using Rhino and Grasshopper plugins to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. The next question we have is from architect Srinivas Murthy. Can you unmute yourself and ask the question, please? Okay, he may not be around. So I'm asking, the question that he has is, it is all good that all architects are now talking about sustainability and building sensibly. What is one thing that panelists have decided to change for themselves post-corona, if they've already decided, or what do they plan to change in their entire process?
Vami, you had some ideas about how the world is going to change. How do we don't need an office anymore?
I wish I could predict the future, but I don't know. I mean, right now, from the way things are going, these are just some initial thoughts of, you know, it questions the idea of proximity and questions the idea of being in one space to work together. It questions the idea of the requirement of a dense urban center. I mean, why can't I live a very good lifestyle in somewhere in the suburban and yet work on projects all across the world? And it questions new ideas of community activism, a lot of things. I mean, global economic chains, supply chains, all of that. So, I mean, I don't know yet what exactly is going to change, but I can definitely feel the change, and we will all have to adapt to it. And one of the biggest changes I think that is required is a positive mindset, because I believe that's the best vaccine available. So yeah, just be positive and move ahead and evolve yourself, I guess.
True. For the next question, can I ask Rama from ASES to ask a question, please?
Yeah, hi. So I had a question with respect to services, because this was one a query that had raised a lot of eyebrows, that how are services managed to be juxtaposed in the complex forms that are generated in a lot of your projects, like in Sharda Library, for instance. Was there a challenge in incorporating services like electrical, plumbing, etc.? Like, could you just throw some light on it?
Yes, I think I mentioned that in the presentation. See, the thing is, I don't look at it as a challenge. It's just that it's probably not done in the conventional way that it was done. But yes, so we couldn't take our wires from the ceiling or from the vault, and hence we managed to take it through the flooring, and we worked with these infrastructure stacks that would take care of all sorts of supports and wires and etc. Yeah, really, I mean, when we look at a form and we try and simplify it, we are always able to generate solutions that are practical and simple to execute. So we don't really find that as a challenge really in any project. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Sameep, I don't know. we've never really encountered a situation where it's challenging and we are asking for something impossible to be executed.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's, for instance, in the Sharda library, like I think like Vami actually already told you, is the fact that we were clear that we didn't want to do any kind of electrical work on the roof, primarily because of the fact that you don't want people punching holes to the bottom because it's a compression only structure. So we the next step that we had to take was really think about how do you do fans in the space, right? There's no AC; it's all basically naturally ventilated. So what we were trying to do was trying to see if we could build a fan that doesn't necessarily come from, is not floor mounted in some sense, at the same time doesn't touch the roof. So that led us to the idea of the fan being on that pedestal that kind of comes back down. So it really is following steps that add up to your final project, not so much the fact that the form itself is challenging, but it's really the fact that the form needs a particular kind of attitude towards services, towards structure that that you would augment the design process with. So it's like, you know, how we actually went around finally building with Rhino Volt. It's the same thing when you actually start looking at electrical and HVAC as well. It comes through the same logic.
Thank you. The next question is from Abhinaya V. Can you unmute yourself, please, and ask the question? We're actually having like 50 more questions. We'll just sort and select out of them and take I think the last 4 or 5, and then we will wrap.
Yeah, so the previous one pretty much answered my query, but again, I would like to know how to merge the already existing, like we have certain standards and rules for construction, which is defined in many books and many, tables like that. So how do you manage to incorporate that or mold that according to the more situation relevant current design or innovative technological based designs that you're seeking?
Vami, go ahead.
No, Sameep, go ahead.
I mean, yeah, to a certain extent, I've already kind of answered that. Can you just tell me if you have something in particular that you want me to address within the project, or is it just a larger kind of question?
Just a larger one, but it's just that I just finished my internship, and what I observed was that there's a lot of standards relating to the services and the structural system in basic, where they expect us to follow certain rules, that the lintel will come here and all that. So how is it fine to change it according to our design, or is it like a hard set rule that has to be followed?
No, I mean, absolutely not. You basically, if you are creating a greater amount of value with what you think will be a method to actually address the project, then even if you have to change what is viewed as standards, I feel you can go ahead and do that. Yeah, I don't think lintel heights are really a big.
It's more about this, services where there is these HVAC systems and the plumbing systems. There is rigidity in them. So how to make them suit your design?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of, I mean, you have to go back and forth, of course, and many times you will find that consultants, you will have greater challenges with consultants than you will have with clients following something different. Mm-hmm. So it's really how much you can push your client, how you push your consultant to actually think differently. And it's possible to do. I mean, it's not, I mean, we've been doing exactly that. It takes a little bit of doing. Yeah. But, once you've done it a couple of times, then they start also kind of buying into that idea.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Architect Mona, Dr. Pingle. Architect Mona, can you unmute yourself, please? Architect Mona?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey Mona, how are you?
Hi Sameep, it's great to see you. Hold on, I'll just put on the video.
You're sitting such much lovelier surroundings than I am. So
that's only in your imagination. Come on, you're in silent Mumbai. You cannot complain, right?
Peacocks on the streets here, so it's.
Yeah, no, of course, Auroville is beautiful and we are still okay here. And thanks, Vami, for your nice and very precise presentation. I just have a small question. Because I saw some high tension, tower near the library that you did, and especially because it's for children. So I was wondering if there was, do you consider this kind of things? I think you'd be very good because you're very good in technology if you would start, apart from other things. But so I thought if you would start taking this into consideration, especially with 5G coming on and stuff like that, do you think it's possible for you to?
No, you're absolutely right. I think, I mean, this is what the point that you're making actually is something that I think architects should address if they need to be relevant to solving problems that, or challenges that society faces. I mean, about the towers themselves in the project, those were obviously kind of the government towers, which the client had petitioned to move to another location. So that's something that is under process. But I think the idea of how, I mean, I guess you probably have more answers to this than I do, but how do you actually do projects that don't need that kind of infrastructure? How do you do projects that can, in some sense, sustain themselves? I mean, we in India are blessed with this access to solar energy that that really is probably enough to kind of that. So I think if we as architects are able to incorporate that in our projects going forward, I think there's far greater value in that than creating, let's say, a vote from using technology from the 16th century. So I think, and we're trying to do that in a project that we are doing in Bombay, where we're doing a new college, an IT college, where we're trying to see if we can be completely off the grid, given the fact that it is an engineering college, to see if we can engineer a solution that can allow the college to work almost independently of the local supply. So, but yeah, I mean, maybe I need to ask you these answers. Yeah, I mean, we don't seem to have it here.
Yeah, it'd be great. We should work on this further because I think there is a lot of possibility, and in India, it's just going out of scale now with all these electromagnetic fields, and
absolutely
not anybody's thinking. And if you're looking at the biology, like human beings and architecture together, it would be very sensible. Thanks. Right.
Nice seeing you, Mona. Bye.
Yeah, great.
Thank you, Architect Mona. Thank you, Sameep. The next question is by Architect Mishali Desai. Can you unmute yourself, please? Actually, she has 2 or 3 questions. Please ask only one of those.
It's all related.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, Sameep. I've been a great fan of your works, and I've been following your practices. In fact, I'm from Chembur, and one of the projects that you had done here at Chembur Castle, I had done the mock-up there, and I know you through Anil Sajanani. Anyways, my question is, I'm unable to see you. My question is for the methodology, basically. Wanted to understand that how do you decide and adopt the methodology for a particular project, especially with the Rhino structures? Secondly, what are your preferred materials for exterior envelopes? Who you think that those are confident prescriptions for the exterior claddings and envelope, and ditto for the interior fit out works also? And at what stage of designing a project do you really identify or choose your principal material? Okay, fine, that this is going to be my main material to work with, or main unit block to be replicated entirely in your Rhino structures. I hope you're, it's all basically inclined towards the
material, right? I mean, I think one is material choices are like a couple of things that impact our material choices. One is the fact that how easily the material is available. Secondly, the fact that a certain kind of project needs a certain kind of material. So the library, for instance, needed the brick tile, which is why we actually went with the brick tile. For instance, in Jetwan, we had a lot of stone dust lying around in the stone quarry, which we used for the project. So stone dust became the material because of its availability. And the second layer that we have, that we usually kind of use to judge it, whether a material is appropriate or not, is its performance. How does it work, given the fact that it's I mean, its performance in the environment. Is it cooler to sit inside and during the heat, and so on and so forth? And does it have any other properties? Things like that. So it's really about how the material, about availability and performance. Really, just two things. I mean, aesthetics is not a consideration. Really.
Okay.
Thank you.
Fine. Thank you.
Next question is by Harsh Shaha. Harsh, can you unmute yourself and ask, please?
Hi. Thank you, Ethos. Hi, Sameep. Hi, Vami. Good to hear you guys, and thank you for the wonderful presentation. And so it's really nice to see how your firm has progressed over these years in terms of using the technology, from forms to performance to the context and to the entire design process now. So the main question which I had was considering the construction industry in India and the drawbacks which we face while after the design, applying it on site with the current tools and technology and the machinery that we have. How do you address these challenges and drawbacks in your current projects, as well as in the future? Do you want to go ahead, and how do you see yourself taking ahead in the technology using, like robotics or AI and other things? What are your inputs on the current construction scenario happening around the world?
Vami, do you want to add to that, or should I take that question?
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay. So Harsh, yeah, there are a couple of, let's say, contradictions in this. One is the fact that construction, the people who actually build our projects are not the ones who directly benefit the most from the project, right? I mean, I'm not just talking about using the project, but also the kind of economic, the socio-economic structure that actually structures construction practice. So there is one aspect of that. But the second aspect, I think the one that you were actually talking about a lot was about really what is the future of construction technology, given the lacuna in some sense, or the skills that we don't seem to find as easily in India as we see everywhere else. I think that the attitude really is the fact that we don't have the skills that you might see within the Western world, but it might also be possible to start looking at a kind of architecture that utilizes the skills that you have domestically to actually look at maybe a new way of building. So it might not be, let's say, the form finished concrete of Taravando's buildings, but it might be, let's say, an ability to put together different materials in a way that's completely in harmony. So let's say it might not be about perfection, but it might really be about that kind of juxtaposition. So if you approach it from that sense, that you actually look at an architecture that is enabled by this kind of imperfection, then you might find something that is something unique. I mean, one instance for me also is the way that, let's say, Pinkish's collage houses, where he has these different windows that are structured as the facade of the project, where, I mean, of course it's very well done, but it's not really about perfection, right? And it's really about this kind of almost dissonant juxtaposition of various window types that actually creates the building. And it's not really about the perfection by which those windows are made. So I think it's also about shifting the emphasis from that perfection. I'm not that achieving perfection is bad in itself, but the fact that there could be another way to do this as well. It need not just be about perfection in a way that you see in a building elsewhere. And but I mean, after this kind of this epidemic, maybe like you're saying, robotics might be the future. Yeah, maybe a lot of us kind of sit remotely and just look at the contractors really. A kind of drone and a robot operator who's actually building the project for you, and it's no longer about human resource. But I think it'll be, I mean, in some sense, you'll also lose something in that. But I guess it's a new world, man. You don't know what it's going to turn out to
be. Right. Thank you.
The next question and the last one is by architect Jyotish Swargari. Can you unmute yourself, please, and ask the question? Architect Jyotish, are you here? Okay, so let me ask that question. He says that every project sP+a has worked out has a different work process along with different softwares used. Is it really needed to learn more softwares since technology is developing every day? Do you use consultants for softwares for Grasshopper or Rhino? Because any internal architect to learn new software instead of focus on process and design. So basically, they would like to know how the process that happens inside your studios, whether someone without the knowledge of the latest updates in the software will still be able to practice the same methodology that you do, or something related to that.
Yeah. I don't think it's about learning a new software, or it's not even about saying, oh my God, yes, now this is a new software available, let me start using it and let me see what comes out of it. No, that's not the way we approach the project. I think we only use software as an aid to enable us to do something that we couldn't do otherwise. Software is not the primary tool to generate something. In fact, it's a tool to help us simplify something that we've already kind of designed or thought or are trying to achieve. So that's where the difference lies. Yes, you probably need to learn a couple of softwares across, during the process, but it's not so much about learning the software as much as it is about trying to see what better can you do with this project, and then whether that software enable you to do that.
Perfect. That was really a wonderful last response to today's session on technology deployment, where we say that software is just a tool. It is not the entire design process. It just aids the creativity. So thanks a lot, Sameep and Vami, for your insight. And this kind of connection and collective learning really brings a warmth to your hearts in these times of self-isolation and quarantine. Thank you, everyone, for coming on board together. In another 5 minutes, we will be switching into the next session where architect Neelab Nagar will be talking about high-rises and skyscrapers that Hafiz Contractors Office has designed. We thank everyone who has joined us, especially for Sameep's sessions. We will now move into the next session. But before that, Geeta, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sonam. Wow, that was such a delightful presentation, Sameep and Vami, followed by this intense Q&A. I think we could have gone on for another hour if, the discussion could have easily gone on for another hour. There was so much to learn from what you're doing. Thank you so much. And after seeing that presentation and that Q&A, one strongly feels that the sky is really the limit for any team driven by passion and creativity.